Welcome back to Inside Troy, the Peristyle Podcast, USCFootball.com. Wherever you are listening, thank you for joining us as we continue through this positional preview for USC's 2025 Spring Camp. Connor, we are through with the secondary as we move to the trenches, more to the front of USC's defense, and we're going to go with the linebackers, which not just because of Rob Ryan as the new position coach, but could be one of the more fun positions that we have for 2025 for these Trojans. So when I say linebackers, when I say USC, when I say 2025, what are those early impressions of that room?
My first impression is as follows. This group should be better than last year's, but I'm afraid to say that with 100% certainty because Mason Cobb and Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, they were always out there. They played just about every game. Cobb might have missed one game. They were always on the field. They rarely came off. And you look at who's in line to be an impact linebacker this year. You have Eric Gentry, who we know his injury history, and then Desmond Stevens, a young player who barely played over 100 defensive snaps last season. We both really like Desmond Stevens, but the best availability, Chris, is availability, as they say. Is that the expression? That still doesn't sound right to me. But you just got to be able to play, and like they don't have a guy on this roster right now who it's like, I know he's going to make it through the season and be really good. You hope that's Eric Gentry. So the ceiling is higher than last season. They have a chance to be better than last season, and it's possible, but I don't know how you could possibly say that they will be right now because those guys last year played every single game just about.
Yeah, that's a really good point in terms of the availability, the dependability of those guys in the middle, and it's freaking linebacker position. You know guys are going to get dinged up. It's one of the most physical positions on the defense. And yeah, we know Eric Gentry is one of the most talented players on this team when healthy. We know he's one of the more talented players in the conference, in the country, when he's healthy, and he's had to battle some injury stuff, but there's no denying what side of impact he has on the field. But around him, a lot of young talent, but again, kind of similar to the safety position where there's not a ton of experience, but I do like the talent potential of this room better than the safety room. And I just say safeties because we were just talking about them, but we're going to get into those guys overall right now. So let's just get into the losing guys. You're losing Easton Mascarenas-Arnold. You're losing Mason Cobb, and you're losing Rajon Davis, who entered the transfer portal, who would have been a valuable player for this room in 2025, but he's off to Fresno State following Matt
Oregon
Entz,
State.
Oregon State, excuse me. I don't know why I said Fresno State. I thought he was at Fresno State.
He got an offer from there.
Yes. So off to Oregon State in the Pac-2, and those are kind of three key losses for that room. And as you said, a lot of dependability in that room. But you have a very new look linebacker room with the guys you have returning, which is redshirt senior Eric Gentry, who we know that talent, but he had a redshirt in 2024 with the concussions, did make it back for the Las Vegas Bowl, so he did play in 5 games, led the team, or believe was tied for the team lead with 6.5 tackles for a loss, and all of those pretty much came in those first 4 games of the season, which kind of spoke to his talent, but also spoke to how the defense struggled to make plays in the backfield. Sophomore Desmond Stevens, probably your number 1 breakout candidate for 2025. Redshirt freshman Jaden Walker, redshirt freshman Elijah Newby, redshirt senior Garrison Madden, and then redshirt senior Anthony Beavers, who spent most of his USC career as a safety, but was moved over to linebacker last season, kind of in a move to offset the loss of Eric Gentry and his redshirt. But now, based on some snooping and some digging and some reporting, it looks like Anthony Beavers is going to move full-time and start this season as a linebacker for this room to help bolster that depth and just give them some more veteran experience, as everyone else is basically a second-year player outside of, Garrison Madden, but he has not played at all.
I need to set the record straight. The best ability is availability, not the best availability is availability. I knew that came out weird. Anyway, Anthony Beavers at linebacker, Chris, I love it. I think that USC has a clear need. They need depth at linebacker. He is a guy who's older, who's been around the block. He's very strong. He's gained weight. On paper, Eric Gentry, Desmond Stevens, and Anthony Beavers, it's a really solid linebacking core with the potential to be elite. If Stevens takes a jump, if Anthony Beavers can give you a little something as that third linebacker, then we all know what Eric Gentry can do if he's healthy. So I like that move a lot for Beavers. I like that move a lot for USC. And How good they think Beavers will be, I think, determines what they do in the transfer portal. Because to me, like, this is a clear need. I know Desmond Stevens has a high ceiling. If he's your third linebacker as a sophomore, I don't think that's the end of the world. If he's your number 2 linebacker, that could be really good because he has a high ceiling. But if you bring in a guy who is a 1-year rental and very, very talented linebacker off to the NFL after the season, in an ideal world, that could do a lot for this room.
Yeah, I like the move too. 6'1", 250 pounds. He was always a big safety. Not quite the speed to be like a coverage safety. He was always really good in the box, and obviously as a linebacker, that's where you kind of live. And just as being a linebacker or a linebacker, a safety turn linebacker, your coverage skills are going to be better in that regard as well, covering those bigger tight ends. So Anthony Beavers, we love the move. Again, you need depth, and it just fits from a perspective there. Although looking at the safety depth room, maybe they could have wished they could have kept Anthony Beavers in that room as well, just knowing how thin they are there. But pairing with Eric Gentry, Desmond Stevens, yeah, that could be a really solid combo. 2 veteran guys. I know one is kind of just new to the position, but Desmond Stevens, I kind of want to focus on here. But as I mentioned, the breakout candidate of this room. We heard so much about him as a freshman when he arrived in the spring and over the summer, and he certainly flashed. He had some big plays coming in there. Didn't play as much as I thought he would play, but in the end, he played 13 games, 0 starts, but he got enough to show that, like, hey, he is the future of this linebacker position, and we would expect him to be their Mike linebacker for 2025. At least that is my expectation, going to spring, moving forward. This is his position. Got his feet wet last year. Now it's time to make that jump.
He got his sea legs, as they say. What do you just think about the whole equation, Chris? Because, like, the high of this room, I think, is so high, but like I could see it going wrong really quick. Eric Gentry, he's a concussion away from maybe not playing football again. He had multiple concussions last season. That scares the crap out of me. And then you're left with a lot of inexperienced guys. So, like, I love Desmond Stevens' potential. To me, it seems maybe a little quick to just insert him as that do-it-all Mike linebacker. I don't know. This room, it just kind of weirds me out a little bit because I'm so surprised they didn't go out of their way to really try to add someone else in the portal window earlier. They did lose their linebacker coach in Matt Entz, and it took them a little bit. But it just seems really thin and really inexperienced, and it seems like they're really banking on Gentry to have a huge year, which I understand. But he's such a health risk that I don't know how you could possibly bank on him to have a huge season just based on what happened last season.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and how it's like scares you because Eric Gentry, the ankle injury 2 years ago.
I mean, he was at an All-American pace though before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Like, he could be an exceptional piece for sure. I don't want to try to sell him short, but the concussion history scares me.
Yeah, especially concussions. It's like seeing the way he plays football.
Yeah.
Like, he's the most aggressive attack dog they have on this defense. Like, you're not going to change the way he plays football to potentially avoid a concussion. Like, that's just how he plays football. That's what makes him Eric Gentry. That's what makes him the angry giraffe, is the style of play that he has. And especially when you're going to pair him with Rob Ryan, yeah, you're not turning that down for anything. So yeah, that is a huge risk. But again, I look at it, it's like, it's football. People get hurt. You can't really kind of like worry about that in the end because it's football. It's physical sport. People get hurt. So if I have Eric Gentry on my team, I'm psyched. If he's going to be my starting will in my mind. I think it's more about Desmond Stevens. Like, you need Desmond Stevens,
Yeah.
because there's a lot being placed on
you need
his
both.
young. Yeah, you need both, but you're placing a lot on the young Desmond Stevens to kind of make it work in terms of putting Eric around him. Desmond Stevens as the Mike, as a sophomore. But again, you got Rob Ryan in that room. If he can, translate that NFL mindset and that teaching, if he can, dial it down for these, young college kids, I think that's going to be a great pairing. And I'm excited to hear what he says about that room. But it does feel like it's Eric Gentry and Desmond Stevens are bust for this room right now, because I know you have some other guys in there. Anthony Beavers, we just talked about how we liked. But it's like you need like one of them to play the entire season fully healthy and at a super high level.
Mm-hmm. And Elijah Newby, he's a linebacker. They had him at the edge in the ball practices, at the Las Vegas Bowl, so he was playing out of position there. Did he get to rep as a linebacker at all once the regular season ended? I don't know. Like, he's someone who I'm excited about, and it's clear that he could be in the mix just because they don't have a lot of bodies. He was a top 247 recruit. He's entering his second season. To me, he has a high ceiling. He just didn't do anything on defense last season, and it wasn't
special teams guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't his fault. He's a true freshman, but like, ideally, you just want to see flashes, or you just want to hear something. And it's a little bit like the tight end room where those guys were highly ranked, but then Lake McCree gets hurt, and what do you have? There wasn't really a whole lot of substance there for these first-year guys. No one really flashed. So I just the overarching thing for me with this room is just the variance, because like if you get a full season out of Eric Gentry and you get a full season out of Desmond Stevens, yes, he's young, that linebacker pair should be really good, and I would feel really good about it. Anthony Beavers is your third linebacker. Like, I like his experience. It's a new position for him, but if he's being taught by Rob Ryan, if he's being thrown into linebacker full time like he was at the end of last season, that's good. Then you have a high ceiling piece in Elijah Newby. We kind of crapped on Mason Cobb and Easton Mascarenas-Arnold last season. Like, they maybe weren't as good as we had hoped, but like, they just played so much and they had so much experience, and this room just really lacks the experience. And Gentry, who has a lot of experience, missed so much time last season. I just wish there was one more sure thing in here, and then I'd feel a lot better about it. So maybe they'll add that. We'll see.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about adding one more sure thing, because there's a bunch of question marks, and I feel like that's kind of the theme of our defensive series so far. It's like there's question marks down the roster, and that is another one when we get to the linebacker. But I will say, losing Easton Mascarenas-Arnold and Mason Cobb, looking at the room now, it is a much more versatile and athletic room overall. We know what Eric Gentry could do moving around. Desmond Stevens, former safety, he has way better coverage skills. Jaden Walker, former edge guy. Elijah Newby, like 10-7 track speed, like a freak athlete. Garrison Madden, a track guy as well. I don't know what he's going to do, but Anthony Beavers, former safety. There's just so much more athleticism and versatility among this group than USC had in 2024. Again, that doesn't answer for like the depth questions, but overall, I think this is a higher ceiling room.
Yes, I agree.
Than last year. Regardless of what you think of Easton Mascarenas-Arnold and Mason Cobb last year, they had their issues, but they were at least really dependable. This room isn't really dependable. At least they have to prove that they're dependable this year.
I would say lower floor, though, on the flip side.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
And I love Rob Ryan. We all love Matt Entz as the teacher last season. I'm of the belief that like an assistant coach can only do so much. Like, you need dudes in the room. Of course, that's the ideal pairing, where you have a great coach and just a great group. And this could get there. But like, I was just dumbfounded that they didn't add a linebacker in the last cycle. Again, they had some turnover at the coaching spot. I understood it, but when the McCullough kid went into the portal and like USC didn't even reach out to him, it was just like, how can I see that this is such a glaring need? And then they didn't see it. So maybe they feel otherwise, or again, maybe they'll add something down the line. But like, that to me was the top need, and then they didn't do anything. So yeah, I mean, not to get ahead of it here, but like my weakness, I'll just cut to the chase for a second. Like, the room is set up like Eric Gentry will be available every game, and that scares me.
That is a big unknown, correct. But remember, they got Eric Gentry in the spring window, so you can find impact linebackers.
Oh yeah. You can find anything, man. You can
find anything these days.
Yep.
Let's say I'm throwing a hypothetical. What is the like ceiling with this room if Eric Gentry is healthy the entire year? Maybe misses one game. Like, what is the ceiling for this room?
Elite. I think you have two potential NFL guys in Gentry and Desmond Stevens. You just look at Desmond Stevens walk out to practice. He looks like a middle linebacker. He's huge. I love his coverage skills, like you said. Like, top end, really talented room, really talented duo. And then like Beavers, I think could be good too. So I like that trio, and if it all goes well, I think that the ceiling is high, and yeah, that could be a big part of what I think the identity of the defense will be, which is controlling the line of scrimmage. So, I ideally, like, if it all works out, it could be really good and better than last season.
I think Gentry would be in my top 5 most important. I think the defense will be better this year, but seeing how like they struggled to make plays in the backfield when he was gone kind of speaks to like how important he is. So I think he's top 5 for me. And like we said, All-American pace last year, and
All-American pace
should have been on the All-American wall, but concussions, man, they're part of the game and they suck. So did what's best for him and his health, and that was the right move. But you hope the Angry Giraffe, the Philly Freak, can play every game this season, or at least the majority of the games this season. If you need to rest them a couple or whatever, do it. But yeah, the talent potential here is off the charts. And I do want to circle Elijah Newby really quickly, because that's another like freak athlete, as I mentioned, that 10-6 speed at 6'3", whatever. You could do so much with him, and you're right. Was a defensive end randomly for the Las Vegas Bowl. Did not play a single snap. There were pictures of him like hanging out with the defensive line this offseason, so there was a little question like, oh, are they gonna like keep him at defensive end? Is he gonna be there? But given the need at linebacker, I think it's smart to keep him at linebacker. And again, that's the guy they purposely wanted to redshirt for 2024 moving forward. So I expect him to have a much, much bigger role this season. I could even see him competing for a starting job. And we actually have a question about that, so I'll save that for our one question at the end. I would say let's move on to new faces, Connor, but we don't have any new faces for early enrollee, at least. There will be some new linebacker addition to help bolster this room, but as of right now, there are 0 additions in for the spring,
which is a surprise, as I laid out earlier. But they will get AJ Tuatele from the high school ranks in the summer, and I imagine they will add someone from the portal after spring ball. So that is something to watch too. But it's a surprise. You wouldn't expect any position group to not have any newcomers in the spring, especially in this current climate of college football. But that's where we're at.
Yes or no, they will add a linebacker out of the portal.
Has to be yes for me.
Okay.
How about you?
Has to be yes for me as well. Has to be yeses for me as well. But I don't think that's going to be – I think it's going to be like a small school guy. I think it's going to be like a Delaware State kind of guy.
But do you think it's going to be someone who's going to play a lot? Like, to me, remember last season, Eric Gentry, that first game, he played 29 defensive snaps, and then he was just so good he had to stay on the field. Like, I think he needs to be your third linebacker, not because he isn't good, he's amazing, but the health stuff, like you need to have him on a pitch count. You need to limit him because of his injury history. I want him playing like 30 snaps a game, high leverage situations, third downs, like get him in at the most important times. And I want someone else to come and like eat a bunch of snaps like Mason Cobb and Easton Mascarenas-Arnold did, because I think if you're banking on Gentry to play over 700 snaps, over 800 snaps like the linebackers did last season, like you're asking for trouble. If you can be that third linebacker, again, not because he's not good, he's probably he will be the best linebacker on the team. You just need to limit him because of the injury risk.
Do you have a snap counts just in general the last 3 years?
Gentry's?
Yes.
So this past season, 173, so 29 against LSU, 36 against Utah State, but then he was so good against Michigan, stopping the run, 48, and then 30 against Wisconsin, but he got hurt. That Michigan game, like he was so good, and USC, I think after that, was like, you're going to play more, and he was on pace to play a lot more before getting hurt against Wisconsin. 2023, he played 371 defensive snaps, played 70 against Cal, 58 against Washington, but then 64 in the bowl game.
That was the weird season where it was like, he's hurt. Oh, no, I'm not hurt. And it's like, I don't know what's going on.
Played 2 at Notre Dame when Notre Dame ran the ball right down USC's throat. Maybe he could have helped as a run stuffer. I'm saying that sarcastically.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, he could have helped you. So no idea what they were doing there. 2022, he played 560. So there you go. That's a more solid number.
That was with a bum ankle injury at Utah.
He played a lot more. And then in 2021 at ASU, he played 341. So he hasn't been that like Mason Cobb, Easton Mascarenas-Arnold over 700 snap guy ever. But in 2022, he did show that he could play more than he ever has, like over 500, which is pretty good. But I would just be very cognizant of his injury history, which I know USC will be. Like having him play a ton just scares me. I'm a I'm a broken record right now, continuing to say that, but that's just where I'm at.
How many snaps are you giving him in the first 2 games?
15.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you have Elijah Newby, you have Anthony Beavers, heck, you have Jaden Walker, Garrison Mann. Let them freaking beat Missouri State and then play in the Clay Helton Bowl. You don't need Eric Gentry, and that's you don't need him to play. Save your Eric Gentry bullets for Oregon, Notre Dame.
I mean,
Nebraska
do you think I'm being too nervous? I just that's the one injury in football where too many of those you gotta be done.
It's scarier than like the ACL or any other because it's like your freaking brain. So I get it. It's definitely something that's going to be looming over Eric Gentry and his season, just coming off 2 concussions in 2024 and having to redshirt over it. So yeah, I don't think you're being overly cautious. I think they do need to work out a situation where he's not going to be on the field, but like every play. But it's just tough because he's like their best defender, and it's like you see what happens when he's on the field. So like they're just so much better when he's on the field. But then you're in this situation where like but we want to save him, and it's like I get it. It's a really like you're caught between a rock and a hard place and trying to figure out what the proper usage for Eric Gentry is. But I wonder what that's going to be like with Rob Ryan, because Rob Ryan's coming from the NFL where it's like play your best dudes, like doesn't matter, like play your best dudes, get them on the field. This is what helps us win games. So I'm interested to see what that philosophy looks like with Rob Ryan in the room now, as opposed to like Matt Entz, just with his NFL background of him being this spitfire kind of coach. So that is going to be an interesting thing, and maybe that's something we have to ask the coaches about.
Certainly, and that's going to maybe be one of my biggest questions heading into the spring. Like, look, Eric Gentry, we know his ceiling is incredibly high, but like ideally, what's his pitch count going to be? What's his role? I know they don't say a ton in the spring, like they're still going through everything, but like just how do you manage this player where he is so talented and he was a potential All-American last season before his injury? Like, it's probably hard as a coach because you're going to want that guy in there all the time. So how do you manage him? And I really hope we can get a good answer from Lincoln Riley, a good answer from Danton Lynn, a good answer from Rob Ryan, but we'll see.
Yeah. So a lot of questions need to be answered. Mainly, can they be healthy?
Yeah.
Will they bring someone in? Who's going to step up? Will Desmond Stevens break out? A lot of fun, interesting questions for the linebacker room on top of Rob Ryan being your position coach. So that's going to be a fan favorite position to watch, and one we're going to be watching very closely as Eric Gentry back in the mix. Desmond Stevens, can he do it? Can he be the new Mike linebacker? As we mentioned, no new faces. We're going to talk about those guys. We'll talk about them in the summer. AJ Tuateli and Matai Togoai, who's
I forgot about Matai.
Don't forget about Matai. 6'4".
Sorry,
He's like another variation of Eric Gentry. That one's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So I hope he can get on the field. They need him to get him on the field because that's 2 more bodies. But yeah, I still think they need some more dependability, as you like to call it, and that's a good move for them. So we'll see what they do.
I can't believe I forgot Matai.
How dare you?
He's their highest rated defensive signee, I think. So that's
Jakim Stewart might have something to say about that.
Okay, was their highest for a long time before signing day. You know what I'm saying? We're on the spring. We're not talking about the summer guys.
You broke the rule in the safety room. I'm not letting you do it again. I feel like we have to move to strengths and weaknesses, but we already know what that is, and I'm just going to say it. You have star potential through the roof as far as the strength for me, but we're agreeing here. You have zero depth. You have zero depth.
I'm walking all over our format here. Sorry, I've kind of already said a lot, but yeah. My strength is Eric Gentry, Desmond Stevens, and Anthony Beavers as your top 3 linebackers. I like that. If you have everyone available, everyone healthy, if these guys can reach their ceilings. Anthony Beavers, he seems hungry to make it to the NFL. He's been moved all around. Like, this is his last hurrah, the last dance for Anthony Beavers. Maybe relying on him. Like, how could you possibly rely on him when he hasn't played consistently in his career? But, like, to me, this move to linebacker was like they made a concerted effort to try to put him in a really good position at a position of need. So, like, I really could see him playing a role. And those 3 guys could be a really good Big Ten linebacker crew. So I start there because I want to be like, Elijah Newby's going to have this great season, but I don't know if I could say that right now. We'll see what he does in the spring.
That parlays us into our final thoughts with our starter projections. So we're doing Mike, Will, and then that Sam linebacker, which is what Eric Gentry played last season, kind of that outside linebacker role. For me, it's Desmond at the Mike, Eric Gentry at the Will, and then probably Anthony Beavers at the Sam, which is kind of what he played last year in replacement of Eric Gentry. But I kind of think it'll be more like an Anthony Beavers, Elijah Newby situation, where they want to get Elijah Newby time, and what's easier for him using that speed, get him off the edge at the Sam linebacker. So I think it'll be kind of a Beavers Newby deal at that Sam.
Yeah, certainly. I could see that too. And if Elijah Newby outperforms Anthony Beavers, would that surprise anyone? I don't think so. So, yeah, I'm right there with you too. And I know a lot of USC fans, they want to see Elijah Newby's athleticism, and they're really excited about him, and his ability to rush the passer as a linebacker stands out. He's a candidate, if he has a big spring, could certainly turn that into playing a lot in the fall. So he's definitely someone to watch this spring.
Yeah, he's one of those guys I'm circling, let's see what Elijah Newby can do. Let's see what Elijah Newby can do. A lot of freak potential there. So I want to see what that looks like on the field with an increased role, increased reps. And they need some pass rush or consistent pass rush.
Yeah.
So let a guy with that kind of speed and athleticism to kind of go get him off the edge. We have our one question that we're going to end with for the linebackers comes from the Place to Be, which is an interesting Twitter handle. Everyone is so skeptical about the linebacker room. Connor,
Sorry.
I say let Desmond and Elijah Newby play. The inexperience will be important for the 2026 season. Thoughts? So what do you say about just I think they're going to let Desmond Stevens play. I think that's going to be one of those. But letting both of those guys just roll them out there, see what happens, trial by fire kind of situation. How do you feel about that?
Maybe that's the answer that I've been saying they don't have an answer for this whole show. Maybe Elijah Newby is just going to go from 0 to 100, play a lot, be a reason that you don't have to have Eric Gentry out there so much. So that is possible. I don't think it's likely just because Elijah Newby didn't play at all last season on defense, and there was an injury to Gentry. There was an opening there, and Desmond Stevens played, and then it was just more Mason Cobb, more Easton Mascarenas-Arnold. We just didn't really see Newby outside of special teams. Did he play one game on defense? I don't want to say he
I think he got a little bit of what is the one game that they
Utah State?
Utah State.
Yeah, so
I think he got a little bit in there, but the rest was special teams.
Yeah, I always take it too far and say, he didn't play at all when he played one game. But
he wasn't even on the team last year.
I think the point stands where in order to feel more confident about him, it would have been nice if we saw him a little more, again, if we even heard stuff. I heard so much about him as a recruit and how people were excited when he signed, and he kept going up the recruiting rankings. But since he's been at USC, it's just been a little quieter. So that's why it's such a big spring for him. And if he is the answer to this question, he is going to be a linebacker who plays a lot, who is in the rotation, who makes it so USC doesn't need to get anyone from the transfer portal, that would be awesome because that would be a recruiting win. That would be a guy who you've developed, someone in his second season who is reliable in the Big Ten. That would answer a lot of questions, solve a lot of problems, but I don't know if I'm there yet.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't be shocked if they rolled with Newby at Sam, if he just was outright over Anthony Beavers.
Okay,
because his ceiling is so high, much higher than Anthony Beavers, and that's kind of no knock on Anthony, but he played Sam last year, Beavers did, and it wasn't the same. I mean, it's not the same impact as Eric Gentry because there's only one Eric Gentry, but it didn't work all the time. So I wouldn't be shocked if they just rolled the dice with Newby, as Place to Be is kind of asking here, and just being hey, he's 6'3", 220 pounds. He runs a 10.6. We got 2 easy games early. Let's frickin' get him a ton of reps in spring. Let's get him a ton of reps in fall. Let's frickin' set him up to be our Sam guy this season. And we'll mix in Anthony. Maybe we'll mix in Matai Togoai moving forward at 6'4". So there's a lot of options. So, yeah, I'm not going to be shocked. And I kind of would do it. I'm kind of talking myself into letting Elijah Newby be the Sam for 2025 just because I love the ceiling so much.
I hear you. I'm saying don't count out Anthony Beavers. He's strong as an ox, and him being switched to linebacker last season and now has had a whole offseason to focus on linebacker. I'm not saying he's going to play a ton, But I do think he's going to be in the rotation. And Elijah Newby, if he does beat out Anthony Beavers, that would be impressive because he's an older guy. He's been around a long time. Like Anthony Beavers isn't just going to roll over. I think he's coming for linebacker snaps, and he feels like it's his last chance to really make an impact because he has only one more year of eligibility, I believe. So it might be a big year for him, and we'll see.
We shall see, and we shall see everything going on with the linebacker room in the spring and moving forward. Should be a fun room to watch, especially if we get some golden quotes from one Rob Ryan.
And Eric Gentry. He's probably the best quote on the team.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get him on the Helium Boys podcast again because that was so much fun. I am Chris. That is Connor. That's going to wrap up the linebackers, and we will catch you next time as we start moving into the defensive line. So check us out on those positional previews next.